My name is Emma Bridger. I am MD of People Lab. We are an experience and engagement consultancy, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Justin.
How do?
Who's
Hello.
our resident resilience expert and lots of other wonderful things as well.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself, Justin. Go on, go for it. Go for it.
Not a huge amount more to add, so I'm going to take a leaf from your book and keep it super brief. So yes, I'm Justin, and I am a communication skills consultant, but with a specialism in all things related to resilience. That's what I bring to the party.
Which is completely relevant at the moment, now more than ever.
Oh yes.
So, excuse me. So we're going to talk about meaning today, and as ever, I've got a few slides to share. Justin and I will kind of tag team, chat them through. Please use the chat to ask us questions or to comment or to feedback. As I said, for anyone that's just joined, it feels like kind of a natural pause place here, and we want to keep doing these, but we want to make sure that they work for you, they're beneficial, they're giving you something that's, good use of your time. So any feedback, we'd love to hear from you in terms of what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see, where you want to take these next. So we're just kind of debating that at the moment, kicking that around. So love to hear from you. So I'm going to share my screen. Hope this will work. I'm on my new laptop today, which isn't really properly set up. Okay. Of course it's not working. I have to set up system preferences to allow you to...
It's expense. While you do that, Emma, I'm just looking at the group chat there from Amy, who's a regular attendee, of course. Really enjoyed the growth mindset stuff as a mom. It's really made me think about how I praise my children. There's nothing better for me than getting feedback from someone who's been on our sessions saying, I've put this into practice and it works.
Yeah.
That's it, isn't it? Otherwise it's just theory, but when you actually try it out and you get that result, it's magic. So thank you for that, Amy.
Absolutely. I'm slightly worried because it's asking me to, in my settings, it's saying I want to share my screen. I said I'm on a new laptop, so apologies. I hadn't tested this, I should have done. It says we'll not be able to share until you quit. So I'm a little bit worried about quitting.
Don't worry, I can drive the slides.
Okay, thank you. We'll test this afterwards. I've got a bit laissez-faire now with tech. It's just been going so smoothly. I forget that things go wrong.
And now you all on the call know why Katie's here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we talk about meaning. So okay, let's bring up the slides. We kind of introduced this model of PERMA, which is from Marty Seligman, the kind of godfather, granddaddy of positive psychology. I actually can't see your slides, Katie. Have you shared? Oh, here she goes. And this model of PERMA is really all about, kind of giving us sort of 5 pillars of well-being, if you like, giving us a framework to develop well-being. And as the weeks have gone by, we've kind of gone through the different pillars of well-being. And we're at the last one today, which is meaning. So today is all about meaning. So I just want to flick to the next slide, Katie. And the next one. So yeah, today is, really focusing on meaning. And it's, it's one of those things, isn't it? You could do a whole day on this. It's huge. And when I was kind of pulling this sort of content together for today, I was thinking, how do I really kind of, distill this down to something that's really helpful to you? So hopefully we've done that for you. I'm just going to give you a few kind of just golden nuggets and things to think about, really, because it's such a big area, such a big question, isn't it? Like, how do we find meaning in life? And it's quite overwhelming sometimes, I think. So I'm hopefully going to make it a little bit more practical for you and not scare you with the question. But we have got a question to start. So poor old Kate's got to go back to unshare her slides to put the poll question up to get you thinking about this. Just while she gets that up. Hopefully that's working. Text bit so slick.
Yeah, it is. I think it's working for everyone. I think because you're the host, Em, you might not be able to see it.
Okay. So I'll let you answer that. I can't actually see the question, Katie. So I have to read it out because I can't remember what we agreed all of yesterday. That's how good my brain is at the moment. Can't even remember what we talked about yesterday.
It's how much you agree my life has a clear sense of purpose. Do you strongly disagree,
Yes.
disagree, neither agree nor disagree, agree, or strongly agree? So it's just a couple more people to fill that in.
Yeah. So I decided to go with the word purpose and meaning, and they are, I mean, psychologists would argue they are different, but kind of like, you know, I think purpose feels a little bit more accessible than meaning. Kind of meaning of life feels like this massive, big existential question, doesn't it? Whereas purpose feels like, yeah, have I got purpose in my life? But it's just really semantics. I'm not going to kind of go down a rabbit hole of semantics as psychologists do and argue. When you get into this field, if you're interested in meaning and you start reading around it, there are so many different ways that psychologists talk about meaning, and they've all got slightly different kind of naming conventions, and it all gets very, very confusing. So I think just keep it dead simple. Have we got the results on that?
Yeah, I'll read them out to because I'm guessing you can't see them. Hopefully everyone else can see them. Kerry, I can see you on camera. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see them as a participant? Brilliant, thank you so much. Okay, so no one said strongly disagree, which is good. We had 2 disagrees, no one sitting in the middle, 3 people agree, and 2 people strongly agree.
Okay, so across the board then. Cool, okay. And it isn't something that's fixed, is it, purpose? It's something that, you know, at some points in our life, we have a really strong sense of purpose. And then, you know, our life kind of, as it does, is a roller coaster. And other points in our, you know, in our life, I think, actually, I've kind of lost my way a little bit. So it's not really fixed. Just because you've got it now doesn't mean you'll always have it, and vice versa. Just because you haven't got it at the moment doesn't mean you can't get it in your life. So if we go to the next slide, Katie. What's really interesting about meaning, and part of the reason I came to it last, is it's probably the most complex of the concepts that sit under PERMA, not least because it's kind of where philosophy meets psychology. So philosophers are really concerned with what is meaning, what is the meaning of life, if you like. And we're not really here as psychologists to try to answer that, and I would never try and answer that for you. What we're here to do today, in a very short space of time, but psychology generally, is to think about how you find that meaning. So what it is kind of up for grabs, and you can debate that. And there's so many different kind of philosophical models that look at the different sort of, you know, concepts and ideas of what meaning is. And we're not going to debate that. We're going to really think about, well, how do we get meaning in our lives, and give you some really practical tools to start thinking about that. You got any thoughts on that one, Justin?
Yeah, I agree with you. I echo your comments about the complexity of agreeing what the term meaning means. And for me, I'm always looking for ways of accessing these slightly more complicated, nebulous notions in a practical way. And for me, when I'm working in resilience terms, meaning is part of the indicators of resilient approach to life. And I talk about it as just the sense that there's something more to it all, that, you know, we are more than just, you know, human beings eating, sleeping, doing whatever we do, that somehow there's a bigger picture out there, even if we don't understand exactly what that is. And usually when I say that, people go, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Whereas when we think, oh, we have purpose or meaning, that feels, like you said, that can feel a bit oppressive. So I think a dressed down version of it is just simply the sense that there's more to it all. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's a really nice way to look at it. So we just go on to the next slide then. I've got another quote up there. I just thought it's just, again, just to get you thinking really. And why I like this, you know, we bring our own meaning, you know, it's all about our perspective. There isn't such a thing as a kind of, you know, a tangible meaning to life. It's up to us to decide what we want that to mean for us. And I think again, the other thing that's really interesting about this whole area of meaning, and part of the reason I left it till last, is because we've been talking about well-being and positive psychology, you know, that's kind of what we advocate. And a lot of the work in psychology around meaning actually comes from when people have been through difficult times, through adversity. It's almost like, you know, as positive psychologists, we're never saying everything's got to be happy and yay, wonderful all the time. We absolutely, completely are comfortable with the fact that we have our ups and downs in life. That's inevitable. It's kind of the yin and the yang. But most of the work for meaning tends to come from difficult times, you know, times when things are tough. At the moment, you know, COVID, so many people I'm speaking to are really reflecting on what's important to them, what, you know, what means, what, you know, what's meaningful to them in their lives. So we tend to get often we get a sense of what is meaningful to us when things are
more difficult rather when things are going really, really well? So I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on that, Justin, with resilience work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that this current situation has kind of forced everyone, more or less everyone, into some degree of questioning and self-reflection. And I think what most of us are finding is what you described, which is it's about us and our immediate environment and the relationships we have and what we do on a daily basis. I really liked you saying that, you know, stuff that means something to you, that is in itself part of what meaning is for you.
Absolutely. So we just flick on to the next slide, Katie. Thanks. We've talked about Viktor Frankl before. You know, his a lot of his works really, you know, had a huge impact on positive psychology, and you know, really recommend that you check his stuff out because I think it's great. But I've just pulled out some sort of I think some useful ideas here, and he talks about this idea of finding meaning in life in a number of different ways. So it can be, you know, creating a work or accomplishing a task, just kind of doing something, going, yeah, I did it, I nailed it. We've talked about this idea before. Experiencing something fully or loving somebody, I think, you know, I think that's pretty straightforward. But I think the third point is really interesting. It's the attitude that one adopts towards unavoidable suffering, and that's that perspective piece. That's that piece that we can kind of choose what lens we view that that suffering with. And I've just got like a nice little quote from Victor there, and there are so many different psychologists working in this field. Too many to go into today. We could do a whole day on this, but I've pulled out Viktor Frankl's work because he was kind of, again, one of the sort of real forefathers of this whole work around meaning and how we can use, you know, stuff that happens to us which isn't great to really help us actually in the end thrive and be better versions of ourselves. I think it's a, you know, kind of a good message and very, very relevant at the moment as well, with many people going through pretty tough times. You got any thoughts on Victor's work there, Justin?
Oh yeah, I mean, massive fan of his work. He's what an extraordinary human being, and definitely one of the godparents of the modern understanding of resilience. And to your point about that final bullet there about the attitude that one adopts, it's absolutely key in resilient terms. We look a lot at, you know, shit happens, but it's what you make of the shit ultimately determines how it affects you. And someone like Viktor Frankl's experience as a Holocaust survivor, it just goes to show, I mean, how extraordinary the extremes you can take that principle to, that even in the face of absolutely unimaginable suffering, he manages to come out and feel a degree of optimism and positivity and hope about humanity, despite being pushed right to the edge. So it's really, really powerful medicine, this notion that we can choose what we make things mean to us.
Yeah,
they don't have meaning in themselves.
Absolutely. He's a really fascinating character. It's well worth checking his stuff out. So yeah, we're going to go to the poll now, and I know that I took this question from a meaning in life questionnaire, which you can have a go at, put it in the slides for you to have a go at in your own time. But I've just taken one question out there, and I can't remember which one it is because it was yesterday, and that's a whole 24 hours ago. But Katie will bring up the poll, if that's okay, Katie. Sure, she's just...
Yep, that's working.
Yeah. Is the poll up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question, Emma, was, I have a strong sense of what makes my life meaningful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my little pointer arrow from my mouse pad for a second there. So I was like, couldn't unmute myself.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. And I know I find that question really overwhelming, and I think too deeply about it, and then I get all worried that I haven't got meaning in my life. And I just need to chill out about it and go, it's fine, I've got my kids and my dogs and my husband, it's all good. And I think there is some personality factors that come in here, because I think, again, it comes back to, and also mindfulness as well. I think the whole mindfulness thing can really help in terms of just appreciating being in the moment. That can really help give meaning, actually. Whereas trying to I definitely overanalyze and get really kind of academic about it and go, I need to find some meaning. I'm going to do this whole kind of journey of finding meaning, and I just need to kind of just just chill out about it, just let it happen a bit more. So
in terms of the results, again, it's quite mixed across the boards. We've got a couple of disagrees. We've got 5 agrees, and 1 strongly agree.
Okay, so we just move on to the next slide. I mean, hopefully some of the stuff we've shared today will at least start to spark some ideas, hopefully, if you're one of the people that actually, no, I'm not in that place at the moment. But I think it's really good to start the conversation around, well, what does make a meaningful experience to you? And there's no right answer here. And if you can't answer that, maybe just give some examples of where you found meaning or where you've had a meaningful experience. I think most of us can think about a time when, you know, we were moved or it felt meaningful. I think it's an easy, and I'm being very stereotypical here and you know, just to make the point, but I think it's an easy question to answer if you're on the call and you've got kids. I might be wrong there, but I think if something happens when you have kids and suddenly it's like, okay, right, you know, and I'm not, of course you could have meaningful experience with that kids, 100%, I'm not saying that, but I just think it's easy to tap into what that might mean if you've been through that experience. Have you any thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, I again, I like the more prosaic, the more mundane examples of these that I think a lot of us are experiencing at the moment with the lovely weather and the enforced isolation. Being in the garden, that's a new thing for me. I've always wanted to have a garden. I haven't really had one until recently, and it's extraordinary the sense of satisfaction I've got from either, you know, growing things, but also I've put up a bird table, and I can't tell you how just joyful it is in the morning to sit outside and watch the birds feed. That gives me massive sense of meaning and purpose and peace. And it's so fundamental, but I suppose, you know, you could probably analyze, well, why is that what a bit, but something like that, just a really simple activity. And that goes back to Victor's point about, you know, doing something and experiencing that fully. So actually just sitting there and watching the birds and listening to the bird song, those little moments for me are the ones that spring to mind. And, you know, there's bigger ones to do with connecting with people. I know I get a huge amount of fulfillment from connecting with people, whether that's socially or through work. I get you know, when I said earlier about Amy's comment about saying, oh, growth mindset really helps, that gives me a massive sense of meaning and purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's times when you do the job we do where, I mean, we did a kind of an online engagement reset for a client this week, 2-hour online, and the feedback at the end of it was like, just like, this is why I do it. It makes it all worth, you know, the long hours and the dodgy tech sometimes. So, well, now we've got a few comments coming in. Katie, do you want to share? What's you got coming in?
So there's just the one relating to this particular discussion point, which says being with special people and helping people. For example, at a small festival last year with 2 friends, sunshine, coast, but also fundraising for a good cause. Awesome. We've just had another comment come in as well, which says, when I get the chance to coach colleagues.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I can really relate to that one. I don't do loads of coaching because it really exhausts me, but I run a 2-day coaching conversations course, which I run for lots of my clients, and I absolutely love this course because people come in with their arms folded, and like, it's for line managers, and they're like, what's this all about? And it trains itself, because inevitably, as people are practicing their coaching, they're being coached. So you don't have to convince people it's a good thing. They're getting coaching, they go, wow, and you can just see the lights go on. So I completely get that. It's very fulfilling to coach somebody, for me anyway, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, Emma, the 2 comments that have come in as well. And in fact, online coaching was amazing. I was buzzing. Yeah. This taps in again to the point Viktor Frankl made about he's really, really big on our interconnectivity, our interdependence, and the fact that we're not alone. And when we seek meaning through connecting with other people, it's a really, really powerful source. And I know for him, that was really key to his survival, was the relationships he was able to create, even in those circumstances. And there's all sorts of extraordinary stories for, you know, prisoners of war who've managed to figure out ways of creating a code to contact each other and speak to each other, and that features really strongly. And again, with children, it's that sense of you being, you're bigger than yourself. You're part of something bigger. So for me, it's the, you know, that sitting with nature, or for the other people on the call, it's that sense of doing something for a good cause or coaching a colleague. Or it reminds us that we've fallen for a fake narrative, this narrative of the individual, and that actually it's a relief because we reconnect with something that's bigger than ourselves, be that other people or nature, and that feels really good. It's like, oh, great, pressure's off. I'm not on my own.
Definitely. And I know we've talked about this already, but I think, you know, using that lens when I, you know, the current crisis, I know it's been tough for many of us. I've really kind of worked to use the current crisis with the lens of, this is giving me that dose of perspective I needed.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy. And, you know, you can't have really big, super meaningful experiences all the time, but occasionally something happens in your life and you go, okay, that was awful, but the benefit is I now really appreciate what I've got, or I appreciate what I need, or I've got this clarity for me anyway. So, but yeah, the little things as well. I took the kids for a walk yesterday afternoon, went and sat on the beach, and it was just lovely. Just was enjoying being with them. Actually, going back to meaningful experiences, it's not all about the kids, but, you know, this whole COVID thing, I run my own business. I'm here, there and everywhere. I don't really see much of my kids. I see them at the weekends. I'm away a lot in the week, and I'm like, I'm never going to get this again. You know, this chance to spend 10 weeks so far at home with my kids, and my oldest is just leaving, she's doing his GCSEs, well, just not doing his GCSEs, but he's going to be off in 2 years. So I'm never going to have this opportunity again. And I'm super thankful for that. And that's been very meaningful to me. And I'm like, what a gift, you know? I think it's a bit different if you've got little ones. So, you know, I'll shut up being smug now.
I
Okay,
agree. I agree. I think my children are only 6, and whilst it's really tough at times, it's also such a blessing. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
A nice comment come through there, Emma. From Kerry, just saying, caught a program on TV, rich people becoming homeless. When I went on holiday to Porto and a homeless person approached me for money, I thought about this program, and it led me to engage with them and look beyond their homelessness. I heard their story and it was unbelievably powerful, and there, but for the grace of God, this one interaction gave the whole holiday meaning for me. It's what a lovely example. Thank you for that, Kerry.
Thanks, Kerry. That is a really nice example. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if you're interested, there is a Meaning in Life questionnaire. You can Google it. I've copied and pasted it in here. It's actually got a 7-point Likert scale, and I think you'd have to look up the scoring. But you don't need to go into it too much detail. This is the sort of stuff that, you know, psychologists think you should be thinking about. And I understand my life's meaning. You know, it's a big question, isn't it? But, you know, looking for something that makes my life meaningful, etc., etc. So this is a kind of classic psychologist view of you know, how we would measure if you've got meaning in life or not. You know, if you think it's useful, use it. If not, you know, I think some of those questions for me would be a bit like, whoa, I have no idea. So if we just go on to the next slide, Katie. Some of you have probably heard of Simon Sinek. Maybe most of you have. I'm a huge fan of his stuff. I mean, I think what Simon Sinek does really, really well is he kind of takes some classic ideas in psychology and repackages them in a really interesting, exciting, and easy to access sort of way. And he's made a big impact actually in the world of business around how businesses need purpose, need to find their why. And what he argues is that most businesses start with the what. This is what we do. They might talk a little bit about how they do it, but they very rarely talk about why they do it. And he's got, if you haven't come across his work, highly recommend it. He's got a lot of free resources as well. You can kind of work this through in your workplace to actually start in the middle and say, why are we here? Just go back to that one. Why are we here? Why do we exist? What's our purpose? And, I used Simon Sinek's kind of framework with a company I was working with probably about a year ago now, and they make cast iron pipes in a foundry in the Midlands. And they're all about we just make pipes. And as we went through this process with them, it was really wonderful. A lot of it's around storytelling, getting people to tell stories about the difference that the stuff they do makes to other people. And, you know, all of us, all the jobs we do, all make a difference somewhere along the line, if we're not sure what it is at that point in time. But as they were telling these stories, it started the pride coming through around, actually, you know what, we don't just make cast iron pipes, we help buildings to work properly. Without our pipes, the buildings wouldn't work properly. And the buildings that we help to work properly are schools and hospitals. There's some sexy buildings like the Shard, and I'm really proud of that. And you can almost see them kind of sitting up taller as they're telling these stories. And it was a really wonderful process to go through. So for me, you know, purpose and meaning at work is really important. There's a little bit of the kind of the neuroscience there around the why hooks into the kind of limbic system, the emotional part of our brain, and really makes us feel something, which is why it's so powerful. Whereas the what's very rational doesn't really make us, well, it might make us feel something, but probably not. So it's really nice stuff to have a read around if you're interested in how you take this idea of meaning and purpose and put it into the workplace. Any thoughts on that, Justin?
Oh, I love the overlay of the limbic brain on top of that. It's great because that's what drives our behavior, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it drives our instinctive behavior. And so when you appeal to that and you communicate on that level, magic stuff happens, but
Yeah.
you're not always carrying around an awareness of that.
Yeah, definitely. And you can use Simon Sinek's stuff on yourself as well. So some really great resources. So give it a Google if you've not come across it. You can buy the book. You don't have to buy the book. He's got a lot of stuff that's out in the sort of free public domain. It's just really questions around what's the difference I make to other people in my life. You know, what's the kind of the footprint I leave, and it's just really gets you thinking. It's a really nice way. It sort of takes maybe quite a bit, you know, the previous sort of psychologist, you know, valid and reliable questionnaires a bit whoa. Whereas this for me is a much more accessible way of really thinking about how do I find meaning and purpose in my life. So I think it's really important.
And there's the lovely exercise that's one of his resources, Emma, you'll be familiar with, which is where you ask people close to you, not just colleagues, but colleagues, families, members, friends, and you ask them to fill out this questionnaire about the impact you have on them. That is so powerful to do as an exercise, because if you're struggling yourself, when you get that fed back, you're like, oh, wow, okay, wow. It's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think, you know, I don't know if we've got people from elsewhere on the call today, but British people are very modest and don't really like to think about, you know, possibly having a positive impact on other people. And it's a really powerful thing to go out and get that feedback, because quite often you affect people in ways that you had no idea about. And it's a really lovely thing, isn't it? You know, you might think, well, they will say, you know, that I'm great because I always give them a lift somewhere, or I've got time for them. And actually what comes back after is kind of like, oh, okay, I had no idea that you know, it's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah.
Cool. If we go to the next slide then, Katie. Again, this is kind of some real sort of like practical stuff here from the world of psychology. And these are kind of themes that keep coming up around people who have meaning in their life tend to have this sort of stuff going on. So you talk about fostering a passion, you know, and some people are kind of born with a passion, but I think most passions, you have to kind of work at them. You have to kind of put a bit of effort in, I think, you know. So talk about fostering a passion, whatever your passion might be. We've talked about relationships and how important they are, and absolutely, you know, our connectivity with you know, with other people is kind of what gives us life and meaning in many ways. So again, it's something you have to work on. I think we've talked about this before in the relationships part of PERMA, but really developing and fostering those social relationships. And a second part to that is fostering those relationships that increase your sense of belonging, finding your people. And I'm sure we've all been there with a group of people or particular friends who kind of don't make us feel good, who we always feel like we're in the out group rather than the in group. And I think, you know, the meaningful bit is to foster those relationships that make you feel like you can be yourself and you belong in your home. So I think that's a really important point to make there. And obviously monitoring your mood is, you know, we always talk about this in psychology, being of self-awareness, you know, how am I feeling about this? And mindfulness stuff comes in there. And taking control of your environment. I mean, Justin, you give me some great examples about, you know, deliberately choosing to live somewhere with a garden, and you've made that choice, you know. So we can, you might not have the luxury of being able to choose that, but you know, even bringing some plants in. You know, we can, I'm taking it very literally there, environment. It's much wider than that, but you get the picture.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Doing all right for time. Any thoughts on that one, Justin?
Well, to reinforce, you know, centrally there for me is the relationships, and I like the criteria of relationships that increase your sense of belonging. Is, you know, not all relationships are equal, and some merit more investment than others. And in terms of those in relationship investments, we've already spoken on the calls in the past about vulnerability. And I think now more than ever, we have this extraordinary opportunity to reach out and share our vulnerability with those people who are close to us. It's a really, really strong way of deepening those bonds. We don't think it is. And a lot of us, I think, are experiencing that sense of, I shouldn't complain because I've got a garden, so I shouldn't complain because I've got kids, or I shouldn't complain because I'm furloughed, or I shouldn't complain. And actually, it's not about complaining, it's about sharing your experience. And it's those conversations that create those bonds. We respond really well to that. Putting your hand up saying, I'm finding this difficult, or I'd like help with this, is it's counterintuitive, but it is a great way of deepening those relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely support that. And as you were talking there, I was just thinking of, again, reflecting on the past 10 weeks of lockdown, and something that me and my friends have reflected on, that, you know, we've been doing the house party calls and the Zoom calls, and sometimes they get a little bit crazy if people are a bit drunk and you can't hear anyone. But there have been many times when we've actually genuinely had some really wonderful, say deep, but, you know, some really good bonding conversations that we've said we wouldn't have had this conversation if we were in the pub or at the beach or at the beach hut. We'd have just been flitting around talking to different people. We wouldn't have invested in this really quality sort of conversation. And for me, again, that's a real gift for the last 10 weeks. We've had some really great conversations with people that, well, I've had some great conversations with friends of mine who I know I wouldn't have had those conversations had we just had the usual social thing going on. So that's been really interesting kind of side effect of having to conduct your social relationships online, but I wasn't expecting, actually. That's been quite interesting.
Yeah.
So we just move on to the next slide then. Some of you might recognize this. How to find your ikigai. So you may be familiar with this, you may not, but I think it's a really great practical tool. I love this. You can use this, and those of you that coaches, you probably use this already. And again, you don't have to take it literally, but it just gets you thinking. So ikigai is obviously Japanese. I think it translates as finding your purpose or meaning. I can't remember, something like that. And the idea is that, you know, if you find something you're good at, that you love, that the world needs, you get paid for, then you'll have your ikigai. And I think it's a really interesting model to work through. And for those of you, I know we've got a couple of people talking about coaching on the call. I'm a coach. You're also a coach as well, aren't you, Justin? And obviously huge advocates of it. But I, many years ago when I was working in house, I had a coach, and literally just in one session, I'd always said I would never start my own business because my parents are self-employed, and I've seen the highs and lows. The highs were high, the lows were low. You know, there was one time we had to, you know, we lost that. Well, my dad lost the house. We had to move house because of the business wasn't doing very well. And as a kid, that really affected me, and I was very fearful of that. And I was like, oh, I'll never start my own business. It's just too much, not worth it. And I had this coaching session back in about 2004, 2005, and out of nowhere, this thing bubbled out, and I want to start my own business. I was like, where has that come from? I had no idea where it had come from, and I started exploring it. And I didn't use this model per se, but I kind of used this approach. Well, what is it I need to do, and where's this coming from? And it was, you know, I won't go into it all, but it really helped me kind of make sense of that, by meaning of that. So I went through this with my lovely son, who I've mentioned before, and we realized that he's really into paleontology, and we realized that is something that would definitely give him ikigai, because you know, it ticks all those boxes. But I mean, we've got a couple of minutes before we finish. Has anyone got any thoughts on that? I mean, Justin, I'll come to you first. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, I just love ikigai, and in fact, when I was introduced to it, I thought the person was saying it was a guy, and I was like, who? He was going, no, Icky guy. I was like, who's he? He was going, no, it's Icky. And then so anyway, just, I know, I think it's great stuff. It's lovely. And when you look at it, like you say, it makes absolute sense. And it's a really nice framework to think about. It's, Ken Robinson calls it the sweet spot as well, doesn't he? It's that point where everything comes together, and it's a joyful place to be. And it's lovely. Yeah. But keen to hear if anyone else on the call has reacted or responses to that as a bit of theory.
Katie, have we got any comments or questions, or anyone got any thoughts on this? Has anyone used this?
Nothing's coming through as yet. Maybe there's some typing away.
Okay, well, I hope this is helpful. Like I say, we kind of went from the kind of quite sort of inaccessible sort of psychologist questionnaire to a couple of tools that are a lot more practical. And hopefully, if you're sat there as one of those people that answered, I need to do some work on finding meaning and purpose in my life, hopefully these tools will help you. And I'd say, genuinely, if you have ever worked with a coach, you'll know this to be true. But if you haven't, I think, just investing in yourself by speaking to someone that can coach you through this is such a powerful thing to do. And I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't accidentally had that coaching session and realized that I wanted to start my own business. And then, it's really interesting. What's the comment from Amy, Katie? Can you read it out for me?
Yeah, it says, I've never heard of it before, but I'll look into it for sure. I'm not sure I'll ever find it, though, as I'm not sure the world needs an HR manager, which I don't believe. That's not right. Of course they do.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing to bear in mind with it as well, I think, when, if you're using it as a self-diagnosis, is that it's not necessarily obvious when you start thinking about it, is it? It's when you dig in. So, what do you love? Well, that's one thing, but underneath that, back to the Simon Sinek, why do you love it? What does that give you? So in one activity, you might say, I love, playing tennis. Well, okay, but what is it about playing tennis that you love? And then you kind of go, well, I love the structure of working towards this, or the strategy, or the combination. And then you go, okay, that's interesting, because that's the bit that goes down in the middle. It's not so much about the tennis, it's about what underpins that. So it's a little bit working from the what you love and how you go about achieving that, but why do you do it? Again, that's what drives our behavior. That's what's going on underneath, and that's not obvious sometimes, which is why a great coach can help you uncover the answers. And it's fun. It's a fun way of thinking.
Yeah. That's a really, really important point. I'm glad you made that. Absolutely. And I think it was last week we did best experience. If you weren't, not last week before, if you weren't on the call, check it out, because the best experience is basically just sharing stories about times when you loved what you were doing, either inside work or outside work. And I think it's so powerful because, someone says to you, what do you love? You go, I don't know. And suddenly, for me anyway, I get a bit overwhelmed by the question. And I know, for example, with my son, I've just mentioned him, he's autistic. I've mentioned that before. And if you give him a question like that, he cannot cope with it. But if I ask him to tell me a story about what he really loved doing or what he's really enjoying doing, best experience, he can do that. That's much easier. That's why Simon Sinek stuff's so good, because it's really kind of based around storytelling. So if you get somebody to sort of say, well, tell me about a time when you were like absolutely, loving your life at work or outside of work. Tell me about, a couple of moments in your life that you've just been absolutely, completely sorted, happy, whatever words you want to use, at peace of the world, where you've just, and then you can use that then to delve down and say, what was it about it, why, etc., and kind of go through this process. But I think starting with the stories is a really simple way to do that. So, okay, I think we are almost at time. Has anybody got any questions before we finish off for today?
There's no other questions that have come through.
Okay. So, thank you everybody for joining us again. Really appreciate you coming onto these weekly calls. As I said before, we're going to have a little bit of a pause and a reflect on where we take this next. So any ideas, any suggestions, please either put them in the chat or get in touch with us afterwards via the email. We'd really love to hear from you. And thank you so much, Justin, for co-hosting these with me for the last 8 weeks. It's been brilliant, and hopefully we'll continue this wherever we take it
Absolutely.
next.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And in fact, Janina's just said, do you do a podcast? So we don't, but we could.
We could, yeah. It's something Kate and I've been talking about for a long time and never quite prioritized it, but maybe now's the time.
Yeah, could be a lockdown project.
Cool. Right, well, we'll call it a day for today then, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch in terms of what happens next. And enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and take care and stay safe. Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.